Well, hi there. My name is Dara Star Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. Thank you all so much for joining me here on KJLH, where we like to sit down once a week and we talk about the issues that matter. I'm so glad to be with you once again this week to kind of walk through some of the aftermath of the election. I have to say that is still where my head is, and I want to devote this show to working through where we are. I'm going to call this episode, How Should We Then Live? There's a man named Francis Schaeffer, who was a writer and a Christian philosopher who I read a lot of his work and watched a lot of his films, his documentaries when I was in college. And he had a series called How Should We Then Live?, which had a lot to do with the role of morality and Christianity in the culture. And so that title kind of stuck out to me. So I want to start asking some bigger questions right now around what our responsibility is, what our role is as those who have watched all of this play out. What is our directive going forward? I want to tell you before we get fully immersed in this episode that you can find me on the KJLH Instagram page. There is also a KJLH app where you can hear any of these shows. You can definitely hear the breakdown at any time if you download the KJLH app. You can also find me on my personal Instagram page at Dara Tucker B. That's DARATUCKER and the letter B on Instagram. And you can find me on all other platforms at Dara Star Tucker. That's my name. That's Dara with one R and Star with two. As you probably know by now, you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Threads. I'm loving Threads these days. I get to share some sort of stream of consciousness thoughts about what's going on. I try not to overuse that platform, but that's helped me to work through some of my kind of in the moment thoughts about where we are, how we are progressing. I'm sharing thoughts about how I'm sort of working through this emotionally, just grappling with some of the news that's coming down the pipeline. So if you like that kind of thing, if you are a Twitter user or if you are a former Twitter user, a lot of folks are making the shift either to Blue Sky or to Threads. You can also find me on Blue Sky. I'm at darastartucker.bsky.social. So find me on Blue Sky or Threads to hear more of my Twitter-like thoughts on what's going on right now. So I want to get into the crux of the conversation that I really feel like is at the front of my mind right now. So for those of us who did not vote for what I fully believe is going to be a 4-year, at least, a 4-year clown show. Okay, that's what I'm calling it. What we are about to have to deal with. You know, they're calling Black women at this point the 92%. We are in the 92% who voted for Kamala Harris. We have historically supported the Democratic candidate in very high numbers. So it really was not just about Kamala Harris being a Black woman, but Black women understood the assignment in this election. So the idea that we are going to have to find out because other people effed around does not feel fair. But there are a lot of us who actually knew what our assignment was right now. Black men by 80% voted for the Democratic candidate. There are a lot of us who had absolutely no desire to see whatever it is that we're going to watch play out for these next 4 years play out. We had no interest in participating in any of this. And we are here. We're all in the same boat, brother, as the song used to say. We're all in the same boat together. And we're going to have to ride this out together. So then the question becomes, what is our role in this, particularly those of us who are speaking out? You know, I'm a social media content creator. I have a podcast. Obviously, I do this radio show, and people expect to hear from me in times like this, along with many of the other voices that they have come to depend on. A lot of folks are not really that trusting of mainstream media right now. A lot of folks have been let down by outlets like MSNBC and CNN, and they're feeling betrayed, understandably. I'm feeling betrayed by a lot of folks right now. So the question is, how do we move forward? What is our role? Are we plugging in? Are we paying attention? We're definitely watching some of these cabinet picks. And, you know, I was going to go down the list and just kind of let you know who some of these folks were that he was choosing. But I'm sure there are plenty of places that you can go to get more information on exactly the series of events that is lining up to set the stage for what this Trump presidency is about to be. So I'm going to be super transparent with you now. I am still in a place where I am truly grieving what has happened. And I think I have just been waiting to get to the point where I'm over the shock of it. I'm over the impact of this loss, and I'm ready to move on to whatever the next phase of it is. And as I said, a lot of people are tuning out of the news, and I'm sure that a lot of people are in that same place of grieving. But as you know, if you have been through the grieving process, it doesn't move necessarily at the pace that you want it to. You really can't decide when that grieving process is over, and it really never does end. And I've been kind of grappling with this within myself and wondering why this loss is hitting me in the way that it is. I've had a whole lot of activity that has happened since the election. There's a lot going on in terms of my career. I just recorded an album. I recorded an album in the wake of the election. I had a birthday. I had family that came in and visited. I have traveled. I've done some speeches. I've toured. I've been active. And I have noticed when I am in that place of having a lot of activity going on, there'll be 2 or 3 days where I'm distracted. I'm kind of invested in what I'm doing and really happy to be busy. But as soon as that busyness is done, I find myself battling those low spirits. I'm back just kind of camped out in the bed. I'm watching my comfort TV, if it's Frasier or Modern Family, or even I'll go back even farther than that with Dick Van Dyke or Little House on the Prairie or something like that. I'm just watching these comfort shows in the little time that I do have to kind of recuperate. And I'm noticing that it feels very much like that space of grieving a loss. If you've been through that, then you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. And I have felt a little bit of guilt around that. The idea that this feels like a death to me. It feels like the death of something. And I'm thinking, well, this is just politics. You know, how much does the president, who the president is, really even impact our day-to-day lives? You know, you constantly hear people say, well, you know, who the president is, they come and go, but your local politicians and what's happening locally impacts your day-to-day life much more than the presidency does. And that is true. To a large degree, that is absolutely true. We need to be paying attention to who the school board presidents are, the election board presidents, the state commission, county commissioners, and these types of people definitely have an impact, a great impact on our lives. But this particular election was different from other elections, I have to say. It really was not just about who is the president of the United States? Are we emphasizing Republican or Democratic values? Are the conservatives going to be in charge? Or are the liberals going to be in charge? The stakes of this election felt and still feel much higher than that. And I know that I am not the only one who is feeling that reality at this point. And I have a lot of fellow social media content creators who are just, you know, my perception at least is that there's just a lot of doomsday content being put out there. A lot of people are just venting and getting out this anger and fear, really. They're just working it out, and we're all working through it the best we can. I haven't really had a whole lot to say online because when I speak, I hope you all know at this point that I want the words that I say to be beneficial in some way. Even if I'm not delivering the best news, I want to be able to let you all know, look, here's the proactive thing that we can do, considering the set of circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I don't know that I've been able to find that place of here's how we move forward. I have really been in a place of grieving something that is very deep, something that goes beyond just the loss of an election. And as I said in a previous episode, I am dealing with this from a position of not only being a Black woman, so I'm a Black person, I'm a woman, the insult of that, just as a Black woman, to watch this highly qualified woman of color be put up next to this man who has absolutely no business even running for any kind of office. And for that to have been close in the least, and then to watch her ultimately be defeated by this man, that feels like an affront to me as a Black woman. It feels like an affront to me as an American citizen, but particularly as a Black woman. But then for me, there's also the layer of being a content creator where I have invested so much time. I've invested the last year in really just ringing that bell, waving those red flags, getting into the history of all of the things that we should be concerned concerned about. I mean, I'm digging deep into my own training around what happened in Germany and really trying to help people to understand the danger that we are faced with, and to just hit that wall with that loss and to feel that I did not do a good enough job communicating the dangers of what we are dealing with. So on several levels right now, I am just grappling with how should we then live? That's the reason I want to call this episode, How Should We Then Live? Because what's the next step? What's my job? What is your job going forward? So some folks are stepping back. They are not going to be paying a whole lot of attention to the news. I feel like on some level, that is a dangerous approach, because we cannot treat this situation as though all is lost. Of course, this really stings right now. We are in the direct aftermath of this loss. Donald Trump has not yet been inaugurated. That's going to happen on MLK Jr. Day, and that is insult to injury, frankly. And I'm hoping that there are lots of really big, loud celebrations of MLK Jr. and just, I hope we can make some noise on that day. And there's a bit of a danger with taking our hands off the wheel. And I keep using this analogy. If we're taking our hands off the wheel and just assuming that because these people are in power, we have no power, we are in great danger of making things exponentially worse than what they would be if we do stay plugged in. So we are going to have to find some way, and this of course is considering everyone's various states of mental health and wellness. Our first responsibility is to pay attention to our mental health and to our well-being, to take the time that we need to grieve, to process through all of this. But in our own way, we are going to have to begin to plug in at least to some degree. I want to play you a really quick clip from Kamala Harris. She came out and made a few statements today to this effect. And it was really interesting how she was mirroring a lot of what has already been on my mind and in my heart in terms of our responsibility right now as citizens and as people who fully understand the dangers of what it is that we're facing. I want to play a little clip of what she had to say today, and then I'll be back to add my thoughts to that.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire. So don't ever let anybody or any circumstance take your power from you.
So that's Kamala Harris basically admonishing us that, hey, just because we understand that this is a very, very serious time, it does not mean that we have to throw our hands up and claim defeat and just unplug for 4 years. If we unplug for 4 years and let these people run amok with our democracy, we may not get it back. Okay, so the only way that this situation could have the catastrophic impact that these people want it to have, the only way that it will have that catastrophic impact is if we decide that it doesn't matter what we do right now, that we are helpless, that the situation is hopeless, that there's nothing that can be done. So I'm going to say right from the outset, even as I said, in a place of grief where I am not watching the CNNs, I'm not watching MSNBC, I'm getting my little newsletters, New York Times. I do a publication called Vox, which is more of an independent publications, paying attention to things like ProPublica, which do commentary and evaluation of the news, paying attention to certain social media content creators that I really trust. Brian Stelter, who formerly worked for CNN, he is someone that I would highly recommend that you pay attention to because he is someone who has his eye on the media and how the media reports the news. There's an organization called Ground News that I worked with and did some content creation for. And their whole thing is that they're paying attention to news stories that are being reported on the right and that they're being reported on the left. They're helping you to understand biases and how that can impact how we absorb the news. I would pay a lot of attention right now to people who are doing analysis of the news and are helping us to find that center, who are helping us to understand where the truth really is. Because even if you feel that you have a pretty good grip on what the truth is, we all still can fall prey to confirmation bias, and we all still can get stuck in our news silos and not really understand exactly what is being reported out there. We don't want to fill our minds with a bunch of propaganda either, but we want to understand the totality. We want to understand the 360 picture of what is actually happening. So as I said, Vox News, independent journalists, Qasim Rashid would be another person I would recommend following. He has a newsletter. Kara Swisher is another person I'd recommend following. There are tons of people. If you all want to reach out to me on Instagram and just say, hey, we'd love it if you would just do a post on independent journalists or unbiased news sources to pay attention to right now, I will do that kind of content. If you want to hear that from me, if you would like to see a video from me just recommending some folks that you can follow to keep track of the news, where it's not just this doomsday stuff all the time that we hear on a lot of the 24-hour news stations. If you're not really in the mood to hear the drumbeat and just to watch the circus, but you want to pay attention to what's going on, there are some folks that you can follow who do a very good job. NPR and PBS, always good sources to follow. So that would be my first recommendation, is to make sure that even in protecting your mental health and protecting your grieving process that a lot of us are in right now, even in that, do not completely let go of the wheel. Take the time that you need, but don't completely let go. Pay attention to what's going on and understand that you are not powerless in this moment. We still have a lot of power, and we can be a thorn in the flesh of these people all 4 years that this man is in office. They may be able to do a whole lot, but they're not going to be able to do it easily if we are still plugged in. The other recommendation that I want to put out there is, we understand that there are some really selfish motivations behind Donald Trump even wanting to run for office in the first place, behind his vice president, J.D. Vance. He's connected to a lot of multimillionaires, a lot of billionaires. There are a lot of corporations, tech companies. Peter Thiel, who was one of the founders of PayPal, obviously Elon Musk being involved. There are many, many billionaires who have put a whole lot of money into making sure that this man was elected, along with J.D. Vance. And I would say they probably have a lot more interest in J.D. Vance having a position of power even than Donald Trump. J.D. Vance really is the person that a lot of them are interested in. But that's because a lot of folks stand to earn a whole lot of money right now. A lot of this has to do with millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires, and corporations, very, very large multinational corporations, earning a whole lot of money. I mean, we've seen what the stock market has done since the election. Rich folks are very, very excited about a Trump presidency, and they don't care what it does to the deficit. It is going to wreak havoc on our deficit, and the next generation is going to pay for this. I assure you, this is not going to be without a cost. The next generation will end up paying for all of these tax cuts that Trump is going to be offering to corporations and to very wealthy people. This comes with a very, very high price tag. And unfortunately, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and even millennials are going to be the ones to have to pay the price for that. But I would say to us, particularly as people of color, understand the game that is being played financially. Save your money. Be focused on making what you can. I mean, don't drive yourself up the wall, but make your money right now. In this 4-year period of time, there are going to be a whole lot of people who are making a very, very high profit off of what's going on. Start plugging into quality financial podcasts. Start paying attention to channels like CNBC. Stop wasting money on things that you don't need to spend money on right now. You need to be investing money right now. You need to be paying attention to what these wealthy people are investing their money in. And to the best of your ability, you need to be reaping the benefits of what these people are engaged in right now, because somebody's going to make money. And I'm not trying to be just utterly crass about this, but the truth is, and the reality of it is, a lot of people are going to be enriching themselves. I don't want us to be left behind. I don't want us to be left holding the bag. If we are smart, if there are people right now that are able to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there for investments, real estate investments, whatever it is that you decide to do, this is the time. This is the time to be saving your money. This is not the time to be buying unnecessary things that have absolutely nothing to do with building wealth. This is your time to focus on wealth building, whatever that means for you. Use these 4 years as an opportunity to come out on top, even through all of the evil that we are about to be living through. You can use these next 4 years to make sure that you come out on top, okay? And I care very deeply about us being able to be the beneficiaries of all of the financial gain that we are going to see so many multimillionaires and billionaires being made in the next 4 years. Personal wealth of very wealthy people is going to skyrocket. These companies are going to take their additional profits, and it is not going to trickle down to the little guy. It never does. We already know, starting from the Reagan era, what these trickle-down economics do. It never works. But if you are in the position to take advantage of this, then you can be one of the people that wins. And I want to see you win. I want to see all of us win, in spite of all this madness. Now, the third thing that I really want us to start focusing on right now is how we can become more involved in the areas of both law and legislation. If you are interested in the law in the very least, this is the time to start learning as much as you can to get that law degree, if that's something that you want to do, to become a paralegal, or just get online and begin to study more about how the law works. There are a bunch of lawyers who are about to be very busy for the next several years, because a lot of the legislative stuff and these executive orders and things that Trump and his cronies think that they are about to execute, all of this is going to be hashed out in the courts. So the field of law, particularly constitutional law, the fields of public health and of government, anything having to do with the so-called administrative state, if you have a background in that, or if you have an interest in that, that is about to blow up. I have also been working with an organization called Run for Something. The objective of this group called Run for Something is that they want to be able to take people like us who are invested in the future of this country and who want to know what we can do to make things better and to make sure that we don't end up in this place in 4 years once again. They want to encourage people like us to run for office. And they have actually set up a website called runforsomething.net. that helps people to walk through the process. It's hard work to run for office, but a lot of these offices end up going uncontested. These people run for office in these rural areas, and they have absolutely no one that is even opposing them. I think there's the assumption that if you are running for office, that you must have some special qualifications. And some people do, many people do. But I think with a lot of these offices that are being filled throughout the country, these are people who are being organized by groups like Moms for Liberty. They are being organized by the Heritage Foundation and many other right-wing organizations to basically mobilize average people. They are mobilizing the average citizen to feel empowered to actually have an effect on their local communities, on their state communities, even in the federal government. A lot of these folks, as we've seen, that have entered Congress under this MAGA flag, they ain't qualified to do nothing. And they don't care. They walk in there with all the audacity that their privilege gives them. So why not you? If people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert can walk into Congress, we're not even talking about the state legislature. We're not even talking about them starting in a place where they can learn about legislation. No, they walk straight up into the halls of Congress and they bring all their crazy with them. And they have absolutely no reservations about doing that because they feel entitled, because they have opinions and they have preferences that they want to see advanced. They have an agenda that they want to see pushed forward. So if they can walk up into Congress carrying only audacity as their qualifications, then why can't you, as someone who actually studies the issues, who actually wants to be informed and who wants to do good for people, why can't you be empowered and emboldened to run for office? We need to get this in our head. The organization that we are going to need in order to run a successful campaign in 2022 for the midterms and in 2028 for the presidential election, that organization starts now. And we're constantly saying things like, well, the the Republicans are playing chess and we're playing checkers and all this stuff. The chess starts right now. It starts right now. So I have a link. If you're on my social media, if you're on my Instagram, you're on my TikTok, I have a link in my bio that will lead you to this organization called Run for Something that can really hold your hand and help you get started in the process of figuring out where it is that you want to get involved. And if you have time, if you have inclination, learning how to run for office. It's something that a lot of us just don't think about, but you're probably much more qualified than what you think, especially considering some of the folks who are really taking positions of power in local, state, and federal government right now. It's really just an all hands on deck situation. And I like to say there's no cavalry that's coming for us. We are the cavalry. We are the people that are going to save us. If you notice, the DNC has gone really radio silent. All the Kamala Harris campaign pages on social media, everybody's really gone silent. And folks are really trying to regroup and figure out what is next. What are we going to do next? Well, you are the answer to a lot of what happens next, which is why I say, as much as we want to unplug, we can't unplug forever. Let's take the time that we need to take, and then let's figure out how we can change the fundamental groundwork, the grassroots structure of what it is that we're dealing with right now, because we can't suddenly decide 3 months before the next election that we care about what is going on in government. That is just not a successful strategy. So I'm encouraging you right now, right on the heels of this very painful loss, to ask yourself what you are going to do to help make things better the next time around. There's a popular meme that's going around right now. A lot of you, if you spend time online, you might have seen it. It's a picture of really a lot of destruction happening in the world. The world is essentially on fire. And then there's a group of Black women who are sitting atop a building, and they've all got their tea and they're just kind of relaxing. One of the women has a t-shirt that says 92%, indicating that Black women were 92% of the group of people that actually voted to elect the Democrats, or voted to elect Harris Walls into the White House. And so the implication is we're sitting here just sort of watching the world burn from a distance. We are unbothered. We are not really going to be stressing out right now. We're just taking our leave of all of it. And this really has nothing to do with us. In my estimation, I mean, I get the meme. I get the visualization. I would love for that to be true right now. But in my mind, that really is a fantasy. That is fantasy land, because when things go downhill and when the world starts to burn, who are the first people that are impacted by that? Marginalized groups. And Black women are really one of the most highly marginalized groups in this country and across the world. When things start to go downhill for regular people, Black women are going to be among the first people to feel the impact of that. The disabled will feel the impact of that. A lot of these immigrants that Trump is going after, they are going to be the ones to feel the impact. But we as Black women, as much as we deserve really to take time to nurture ourselves, to be taking time off and doing self-care, we can't let go of things, because we're not going to be able to just sit back and watch the world burn. We are going to be in a position of potentially being harmed by a lot of the policies that are being implemented. So I'm talking to us, I'm talking to Black men, I'm talking to other people of color. Do not allow yourself to feel disempowered right now. If you have expertise in law, let's start to put that to practice. If you have interest in the law, start to do some real study. Find out ways that you can begin to educate yourself more deeply in the areas of law and in the field of legislation and government. Find out what the investments are that you need to be making right now. What are the fields that are blowing up right now? How can you save your money? How can you be financially prepared for what is about to happen? And of course, through all of this, let's find a way to take care of ourselves, to do as much self-care as we can possibly do. Stay out of the drama as much as possible. If you've got to unplug from a lot of the 24-hour news, do that, but make sure that you stay aware and abreast of what's going on. Find your independent news sources. Find those organizations that are keeping tabs on journalism in general and making sure that journalists are doing their job, because they are under threat right now. When a lot of these dictatorial, authoritarian regimes take over, one of the first things that they want to do is go after the press. So we need to be supporting real journalism. So I hope I've given you really some actionable items that you can really stay focused on right now, even before this next so-called regime takes power. And I hope that what we're also focused on right now is figuring out what MLK Jr. Day is going to look like next year. Because a lot of us were planning on actually being in DC had Kamala Harris won, and watching the first Black woman be sworn in as president on MLK Jr. Day. That would have been just perfect. So I don't want us to let that dream go. I want us to find a way to make that day special in whatever way that we can. So I'm encouraging you all, let's keep each other strengthened, stay connected with your community, get to know your neighbors, encourage each other, build each other up, because we are going to need all of our strength going forward. And let's be smart about how we walk through these next 4 years. My name is Dara Star Tucker, and I want to thank you all so much for joining me for this episode, for helping me to work through a lot of these deep feelings that I know a lot of us are feeling right now. We're working through some real grief, and I think it's okay to identify it as such and to be honest about where we are, but still to be focused on the future and to understand that we cannot in any way, shape, or form allow ourselves to take our hands off of the wheel, even if we are in low power mode and getting our rest in, but still we're focused on the future, and we're going to do this together. Remember that you can find me on the KJLH Instagram page at Radio Free KJLH. You can also find me on my personal Instagram page at Dara Tucker B, or you can find me on all other platforms at Dara Star Tucker. That's Dara with 1 R and Star with 2. Remember the KJLH app that you can also download, and you can listen to the show anytime. They also offer the show in podcast form on the KJLH website. Lots of ways that you can stay connected with The Breakdown. But I look forward to connecting with you once again next week. And until then, let's learn to shout.